I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No additions or corrections.
All right, with no additions or corrections, can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. Everyone's had a chance to look at it online. Can I get a motion and a second to approve consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on, Superintendent Spotlight, Dr. Saunders. And Dr. Grosser.
I have no mouse. Hold on.
Matt.
Wait, oh. Someone took it. Thanks, Matt. There we are. All right. Good evening, Chairman Alexander, members of the board. On January 15th, 2024, middle and high school finalists competed in the 2024 Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Contest at Colgan High School. Sponsored by the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, the MLK Oratorical Contest has inspired over 500 students to display their oratorical skills on a public platform in honor of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year's theme was, "If America is to remain a great nation, we must." Our own Miles Lanier was selected as a finalist in the competition, and on that snowy morning, he went to Colgan High School to compete with his peers around the region. He performed a piece entitled, "Here Am I, Send Me." Now, we've talked about these oratorial speeches in the past, and we've had some people come and do their speeches here, but I am told this was so much more than a speech. My understanding is Miles performed that day in front of a crowd, giving it all he had. I heard there may have been some singing involved and some different parts of the performance. And guess what? He won first place. Miles, we are so proud of the thought that went into your plan for this speech that day, the enthusiasm that went into your performance, and your overall dedication to yourself, your family, and your community. And we want to say congratulations. Here's some pictures. You can see him performing there on the stage. You can see him proud afterward with his family and with his superintendent there. Do you want to, I know you weren't going to perform for us tonight, but do you want to share anything about your journey through this process?
Sure. This was a bittersweet moment for me. I've competed in this competition for 5 years, making it past the school competition 4 out of the 5 years. First off, thank you to the Prince William County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Thank you for putting this on every year. They kept this going in the snow, which insane. I remember I looked outside my window and I was like, no, it's snowing, they're gonna cancel. They didn't. And honestly, this is always a really big moment. It's very important to me because it's crucial that we hear what our young voices have to say on what's going on in the world. And I think we need to pay more attention to that. That's one of the main reasons why this position, being a student representative on the school board, was so important to me, because student voices and student representation matters. And to the younger kids that I see each and every day, remember that things may not be easy and you may not think you can do it, but if I can memorize a speech in less than a month and perform on stage in front of 500 to 750 people, you can do anything you put your mind to. And yeah, that's my family up there. I would not have been able to get there or participate without my parents and my siblings supporting me. There's one missing because she's in college. So shout out to my mom and my dad and my siblings that are up there, 3 of whom are also students in the park. Missing one principal. So my mom has a kid at every school. But I'm grateful for having this opportunity. Thank you to Ms. Stanley and Mr. Villa, my oratorical coaches this year. And also shout out to everybody else that participated. This was a really great event, and in spite of snow, it was a great turnout, and I'm really grateful to even have the opportunity to do this one last time.
Thank you. Congratulations. That concludes our spotlight this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gross. Any board member comments?
Congratulations, Miles. You're always so very well spoken up here. It's been a pleasure to work with you and hear all of your insightfulness, even at such a young age. And so we're very proud of you, and we're so happy that you help represent the park. So thank you for everything that you do for us and for your students and for your community.
Congratulations. Thank you, because you represented Manassas Park very, very well, and yourself and your family, and you should be super proud, because we are proud of you. I know your family is proud. And so excited for what you're going to do in the future. Like, I can't even, what did it say? Your future's so bright, you got to wear shades. So we're waiting for that to come for you, and I know you're going to do great things. So congratulations.
Well, congratulations. I know that was very difficult. The pressure is real, and you just soaked it in, man. Nice work.
Thank you.
Congrats. Miles, I've watched you grow up. You're the same age as my daughter. You guys have been friends for a long time. So, I tell your parents every time I see them what an amazing son they raised. So you are a blessing to this community. You are a blessing to this board, and you are going to achieve so many wonderful things in life. I mean, we're just glad to say we know you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to public comments. Ms. Williams, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No, Chairman Alexander.
All right. Let's moving on to new business. The fiscal year 25 superintendent's proposed budget presentation. Dr. Saunders.
Good evening, and congratulations, Miles. It was quite an opportunity to see your performance in person and to really take in the whole experience. As you said, the students up there from across Northern Virginia were just amazing, and how you supported one another, and how students really showed their voice and shared their ideas was just great to see. So thanks again. So good evening, Chairman Alexander, members of the board. I'm here tonight to present the superintendent's proposed budget for FY25. This is quite a long process that begins for us back in October, and I'm happy to share with you some highlights tonight and talk through some of the process with you. We do have a new strategic plan. We launched this in October, and so this was the first opportunity for many of our members of our staff to really look at the budget in relationship to the pillars and the strategic plan. And so this is a process that we will continue to work through and make sure that all that we are doing aligns with our values and our mission and the things that we find important as a school division. So I want to take just a second to update on where we are with the strategic plan. As you know, in October of 2023, we launched the strategic plan. That was after a year-long process of gathering feedback, talking with each other, kind of solidifying our thoughts and our ideas. From October till about April, our executive directors who are in charge of the pillars will be developing action teams and starting the process for planning how do we put some specific actions and timelines to those pillars. Our executive directors have been working through that, inviting students in some places, parents, community members, staff members to join different parts of their teams, and working through that process as we get into April. April. Between April and September of the coming year, those action teams will develop some key performance indicators as well as specific actions related to the pillars. So they'll really start to put the meat together on how are we moving forward, how are we progressing within that strategic plan. And then in March 2025, we look forward to a launch of a public-facing key performance indicator monitoring dashboard, something that everyone in our community can take a quick look at to see how we're progressing through our strategic plan and meeting our goals. So that's an exciting element of the budget because all of our priorities do need to be aligned to our strategic vision. Miles is a great example of, what we do. What I'm going to talk about tonight is dollars and cents and all of those types of things, but this is what we do every single day. We have so much to be proud of. We have so many students and staff members and programs to really be thankful for and be proud of as a community and as a school system. And so I highlight just a few of them here. I could take slide after slide after slide and fill up a presentation with the amazing things that our students and our staff do each and every day. I want to highlight one particular thing here. You heard some information about our direct admissions program with George Mason this year, and we're so proud to have had 80 students, at least 80, I think maybe a few more have come through since then, at least 80 students be offered direct admission to George Mason University. One of the things that I have the opportunity to do on Thursdays is I sit in the commons area in the high school and talk to seniors, and I just had an opportunity to meet with a young lady who's a senior who received one of the direct admission letters from George Mason, and she was just so excited to understand that this was an opportunity for her. It was not one that she was thinking about, and she's very excited to begin the meeting process and to begin that process with our students. So it's just such a great thing that our students are so incredibly talented, and it's important to remain focused on that as we talk through the budget process. As superintendent, the code requires that I present to the board the amount of money deemed to be necessary for the next fiscal year to support the public schools. That is part of Virginia Code. That's what I'm here to do this evening. And this year's budget looks a little bit different than it maybe has the last 2 years. So one of the things I've been able to do in the last 2 years, we had a heavy focus on restructuring the salary scales, and we were doing a very good job of working within the revenue that was defined by both the city and the state. This year's budget looks a little bit different and has an additional ask from the governing body that we'll kind of talk about as we go through. So the FY25 budget development and inputs, all of the funds were developed using a needs and zero-based budget development framework. We do have our principals and executive directors in the room tonight, and I just have to give them a shout out. This is a process that starts very early on, and they really start to think about what are the needs at the building level, at the content level, at the division, and then at the superintendent's level. So they do a lot of the hard work. At the end of the day, I'm the one presenting it, but they really think about the needs and the opportunities that all of our students and staff need. So I thank them for their work. Tonight's total proposed FY25 budget consists of all 6 funds: federal, operating, grants, capital, medical trust, and food services, totaling a little over $60 million. The federal fund is balanced based upon projected grant allocations. The capital fund is balanced based upon the governing body projected allocation and governing body approved fund balance carryover. The medical trust fund is balanced based upon projected state and local funding and fund balance carryover. Other grants fund is balanced based on projected FY24 fund balance carryover. And the general operating fund is balanced using projected local funds, projected governing body allocation, a request for partial use of the city schools reserve fund, and projected state funds. So as superintendent, one of the things that I did early on in the process is kind of share with those executive directors and those principals what were my priorities in this budget. We want to make sure that we are all aligned and that we are lining up with the strategic plan and the different types of requirements that we have. So I had 3 priorities. Just because something isn't on here doesn't mean that it's not important or not something that the school division will continue to support. But as we're looking at a budget process, understanding what those priorities are is important. So those 3 priorities this year were literacy, compensation, sustainability, and future planning. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk specifically about each one of these, why they're important, and what is in the budget that might be highlights related to that. So the first one is literacy, and I know the board has heard Ms. Kelso talk about the Virginia Literacy Act and the work around that and what school divisions are being asked to do to support early literacy. I completely agree with early literacy being the foundation for success. It's how we get to the end result where we have graduates that are able to have choices that they can make as they exit us and out into the world. So the Virginia Literacy Act was brought into place by the General Assembly and requires school divisions to really have a focus on that literacy piece, both from the intervention, early intervention, to staff development, new resources, and new materials and supplies for intervention. It is a change in how we do our work around the science of reading and really understands and helps to support students to be successful as they move on in their educational career. So literacy across the board is incredibly important to our success. The FY25 proposed budget has some literacy highlights. There are 6 new positions, 2 reading specialists, 2 instructional coaches, 1 reading intervention instructional assistant, and 1 ESOL teacher. All of those positions are found within different funds in the operating budget. Some are within title funds, some are within the All-in Virginia funds, and there's just a variety of places for which those come. But all of those positions are essential to support literacy at that early age. There are funds in here for an English Language Arts K-8 core supplemental and intervention materials. The state has adopted resources that are approved at the state level that the school divisions are now required to select from those particular resources. So we'll be doing some of that work in the near future. As well as professional learning around the science of reading for our teachers. Some of that is required, and some of it is to support them to be able to provide that instruction at a high level. The second priority of compensation, the chart here should look familiar. Several years ago in 2022 or 2021, 2022, we started a process to change the salary scales to a very traditional step and lane at our teacher level, and then looking at remaining competitive with our surrounding jurisdictions as the years went on. This was a 4-phase plan that I presented several times to both the school board and the governing body. I'm really proud of the work that we have been able to do around this to maintain our salaries to be competitive, to allow our teachers and our staff members to receive their years of service and to be compensated in a way that helps us to have and keep the most qualified individuals. And so while we have completed the majority of this, phase 4 is where we are this year. We actually completed the administrative staff scale 1 year early, so we completed that last year. And the only remaining piece is a stipend update, and those would be things like athletic stipends and other kinds of things that teachers do outside of a regular contract. We did not include a stipend update in this budget. We want to make sure we have the right people around the table and really take the time to make sure that we are competitive. So look for that in the year to come. But our compensation, we are very much trying to remain competitive in the local region. We look at our competitors as Manassas City and Prince William County because our teachers can make choices and decisions that are just a road a turn away, right? When you start to think of that. We anticipate in this budget, the other school divisions have not presented their budgets yet, but we would anticipate that both Manassas City and Prince William County are looking at anywhere between a 6 to 8% average increase. It could be more, it could be less. That's just an anticipation. So as we built our budget, we assumed that. And so this budget contains a 5% average salary increase for all employees, and that would be a 2% cost of living increase, as well as a step, which is about a 3% average. So that totals a 5% total average. It includes new employee recruitment and relocation bonuses to attract and retain the best employees that we can, as well as continuing our mentor program stipends. We know that mentorship is an important part to maintaining our teachers and our staff members here, and so making sure that we have a high-quality mentor program is important to that. Linked in here, you would see the proposed salary scales for each of the different groups, the instructional, classified, and managerial. Those are links at the bottom to be able to see where we are. While we don't exceed our surrounding jurisdictions in starting salary, we are, I believe that this compensation package does keep us competitive and keep us moving in the appropriate direction. And the final budget priority is sustainability. This is something that we have been working on in collaboration with the city and our partners in the city. Shout out to City Manager Palco. We continue to meet on a regular basis to talk about ways in which the city and the schools can collaborate in lots of different areas. And so that relationship has grown stronger. In 2023, the school reserve line item was created within the governing body's budget. If you remember, we've had a lot of conversations about what that is. And the purpose of that line item, reserve line item, is to provide sustainability for salaries for all positions. That was the main purpose of creating this, because we understood that as we did salary changes and scale changes, there would be a time when those increases would be required to have more funds from the governing body. It was also created to begin preparing for the potential change in the local composite index. As the city continues to grow and new pieces and new parts and new buildings are going, that local composite index may change, which would mean that there was less state funding for schools, and the city would have to take on a larger portion of that funding. And so in 2023, collaboratively, we created this reserve line item within the governing body's budget. This reserve line item has grown as a result of fiscal prudence and year-end surplus. The FY25 superintendent's proposed budget requests partial use of the city's school reserve fund in the amount of $754,727. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Lyon, the Executive Director of Finance, who is going to talk through the budget development process as well as define the different budget priorities and finances. Mr. Lyon?
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. Good evening, Chairman Alexander, fellow members of the board. As Dr. Saunders mentioned earlier, this proposed budget is a product of many hours and a lot of inputs from our budget holders to the principals, the directors, supervisors, executive directors. It is a 5-phase process. It begins in phase 1. Now on the slide we say phase 1 ends in November, but what I didn't put on there is that it starts at the beginning of October. The budget holders work studying their needs of the students. They review the past budgeted amounts and actual expenditures from the past 3 fiscal years and weigh that on their needs of their requests in this next budget. Phase 1, the principals or the department heads meet with those budget holders to review those requests and ensure that they're grounded in data, the needs of the students, and that they align and support the division's strategic plan. At that point, the principals and department heads bring phase 1 and present it to phase 2 at the central office level to the executive director committee. They present their requests for non-personnel, personnel items in the FY25 budget. The The Executive Director Committee reviews those requests, and then this year, which was a little different from the previous years, we asked our executive directors to balance their sections of the budget. They took the expenditures that were under their umbrella of responsibility and balanced those parts of the budget. So at the end of Phase 2, we presented a balanced budget model to the superintendent in Phase 3. The superintendent then reviewed those requests, reviewed the items that the executive directors had to place on hold and not include in that balanced model. And the superintendent may have added some of those items back in and traded other things out, in addition to added her priorities that she wanted to be included in the budget. And tonight is Phase 4, the presentation of the superintendent's proposed FY25 budget. So at Phase 4, after tonight, the budget will now be in your hands, and we'll work on this over the next month or so to finalize Phase 4. And at Phase 5, the school board, along with the superintendent, will propose the budget to the governing board for appropriations. With any budget, you look at inputs. And one of the biggest inputs in decision-making with the budget is your enrollment. As everyone here knows, over the past couple of years, I've mentioned how enrollment has decreased each year. And this year it decreased again. However, I will say that it was a smaller decrease than in the previous 2 years. So I'm hoping that our decreasing enrollment is leveled out. With some of the economic development here in Manassas Park, with the businesses and townhome and the housing developments, I anticipate enrollment leveling off and maybe even increasing over the coming years. However, there are 3 trends here that I need to highlight. The line parts of this graph are for student subcategories of students, and we look at the first one, the red line, which is students identified as economically disadvantaged. Starting after 2019-2020, you'll see that line takes a dip. That was at the point where the pandemic was starting. Coincidentally, we also became eligible from the federal government to provide free lunch to all of our students because of our high poverty rate. So at that point, we stopped collecting free reduced lunch applications from the parents, and we no longer had to process those. That was not a requirement any longer. So that's why you see a decline in what would appear to be the number of students economically disadvantaged. It really didn't drop. It's just our process of identifying students stopped and changed. We now do a direct certification with the SNAP program. So the parents have to be involved and engaged in that program, and that's how we now have indicators on which students are economically disadvantaged. And because of that change, you see the line began to take a decreasing slope. Now, with that said, in 22-23 to this current school year, you'll see it increased. Our students economically disadvantaged percentage of students increased. That is a significant point to observe, because that means there are students coming to us with less resources at home, which increases a significant increase on our need to address that instructionally, which requires more resources, which in turn increases our expenses. Another subgroup to look at are students who are English learners. Over the last 3 years, you can see a steady increase of our student membership in this group. We're now at 42%. As you notice, a couple slides ago, Dr. Saunders said we added 1 ESOL teacher to this FY25 budget. We also added 2 in this current year that we didn't initially have in the budget. So this is a need, again, with students with significant needs that we have to provide additional resources for to ensure their success. The last subgroup I'd like to bring a light to there is students with disabilities. This group of students has consistently been around 11 and 12%, but the last 2 years it has gone up, and now we sit at 14%. Now these students come with a variety of different needs. It's not just a language, it's not just economically disadvantaged, there's other significant needs with these students that require additional expenses to educate. So as our enrollment may be decreasing, students with significant needs is significantly increasing, and that's why you'll see a lot of expenses increasing in our budget. And this is just a chart with the same data points for people who enjoy charts. I do. Here's our per pupil spending. Now, up through year 2023, those are the final numbers for those fiscal years. I will say the ADM on this chart includes pre-K. Typically, when I speak about ADM in our state funding, it's K-12. But when here, we include all students. And as you see, in 2024 and 2025, these are my projected calculations. They are not final. However, you will notice a dramatic decrease in federal per pupil funding. The reason for that is because the pandemic funds have come to an end. ESSER has come to an end after this current year. So you'll see a decrease there. You also see a decrease in 2024 because of the sales tax anticipated reduction in sales tax revenue for us coming into this year. This proposed budget has 529.6 FTEs. The class size remained unchanged from last year to now. So K-3 is 22 to 1, grades 4 and 5, 26 to 1, and middle school and high school are 26 to 1. Looking at revenues that we built this budget upon, about 66% came from the state, about 27% from the city, 6% from federal grants, and less than 1% from local other resources. The expenditures, 88% of our expenditures are in our general fund, our general operating fund. From there, it breaks out to our capital nutrition, school nutrition funds, federal, and then medical trust and other grants. When we look at expenditures by function, and one thing I forgot to mention, these labels are state-defined labels for finance. These are all the same identifiers that all budgets in the state of Virginia must use in public education. Since classroom instruction is 68% of our expenditures, next will be maintenance, and that means maintenance includes our capital fund at 10%, and then administration, attendance, and health at 7%, then technology, transportation, and food services. Expenditure by object, 80% of our expenditures are in personnel, salaries and benefits. 7% materials and supplies, 6% purchase services, 4% capital outlay, and other charges are at 3%. The next few slides I will present are the 6 funds that comprise our total budget. So first here is our federal fund. Across the top, you'll see the fiscal years. A means actual, BA means budget adjusted, and FY25 is our budget, our proposed budget. So you'll see a dramatic decrease from 24 to 25 across all rows in this budget, in revenues and expenditures. Once again, it's due to the ending of the pandemic funding. General fund, which I just remind you, this consists of 88% of our expenditures. So this is our main budget. Again, here you'll see in revenue, from local resources, we anticipate about $86,000 increase. From the city, a $400,000 increase. That's their allocation for us in their budget, $13.7 million. And in the Commonwealth, we anticipate a $3 million increase in funding from the state. They did redo their, I think, their basic aid formula, which accounts for a majority of that increase. Down on expenditures, you'll also notice that we have a $2.3 million increase in salaries, a $700,000 increase in benefits. And then down there, and other charges up $268,000, materials and supplies almost $900,000, and other funds at $115,000. This adds for a total budget of $53 million in our general fund, which falls short of the revenue of $754,727, which Dr. Saunders has already alluded to about the partial request to the school reserve line to cover that shortfall. One thing I will just point out here, with the $3 million increase in revenue from the state, I want to remind everyone that we had a 2% increase COLA in January that was required by the state. In addition to the 5% that Dr. Saunders has presented here today, that takes about $2 million just to cover that previous 2% plus the 5% presented today. In addition to the benefits of $700,000, you can see where that $3 million is already gone in those two lines. With inflation, the increase in our students with significant needs, we just have additional costs, and you put inflation on top of that. We have additional costs for the non-personnel items too. This is our new fund, the other grants fund. I do not project any new revenue at this time coming into this fund, so it will operate off a fund balance at the end of FY24, which at this point is the all-in funding. Anticipate carrying over $1.4 million and anticipate almost a $700,000 expenditure next year. That'll leave us with another $700,000 carryover at the end of FY25. The all-in funds are, the period of performance for those is 3 years. So we haven't for FY26 to expand all those funds. School Nutrition Fund is self-supporting. Here you will see about $2 million in revenue, and we have a $2.3 million in expenditures. So once again, our expenditures exceed the revenue by $220,000. That is by design because we are required to spend down that fund balance. So I anticipate starting next year the fund balance of $527,000, and by the end of next year having a $300,000 fund balance. One thing to remind everyone, right now all of our students in this proposed budget will eat for free. We are not charging students yet. I anticipate probably around FY27 we will have to make a decision whether to start charging again or build into the budget to cover the materials and supplies and all the expenditures for the food service budget. Capital projects, I presented the CIP program the last meeting, so this just represents what I presented previously. Medical trust, this fund is for retirees and their medical premiums. Some of them, 5 of them, we have who were part of a previous policy, who we provide assistance to as part of that early retirement. Altogether, all 6 funds rolled up, add up to about $58.1 million in revenue, $60.4 million in expenditures. Down at the bottom, you see when we roll all those fund balances up from every fund, you'll see we end up with a $1.3 million fund balance, just as an aggregate total. The 5-year forecast, which is a attachment, I think the mouse is working. As you can see in the 5-year forecast, if you look out into the out years, and I draw your attention to the general operating fund, the general operating fund doesn't have a fund balance, but you can see in the general operating fund, we got to FY27, 28, 29, there's a significant shortfall. So we have to address that as we go out into the out years. The model is set up to increase the revenue by 2%, and every other year is a step. And then the other years are a step and a COLA. So FY25 is a step and a COLA, FY26 would be a step, and then this just repeats that pattern in the out years. But if you look at the food service budget, you'll notice the fund balance cannot last more than, I believe, is FY27. And that's why we'll have to begin, we'll have to make some tough decisions at that point, how to address that. Either start charging again or figure out an allocation, some funding to cover it. Next steps, after tonight, we'll have a public hearing on February 26th. March 18th, school board adopts the FY25 budget. And March 19th, the school board and Dr. Saunders presents the proposed approved budget at that point to the governing body for appropriations. And this concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Sloan.
So thank you again for this evening. Again, I want to take a minute and just thank the staff members who have worked so very hard to present and put together this budget. Mr. Lyon, the principals, the executive directors. I couldn't be here without them, and I do very much appreciate their work and their time. Board members, Mr. Lyon will send to the board a link for a Google document that you can begin to place questions in. Staff members will answer those questions. And then we will present those questions and answers publicly so that the public can see those as well. We will start that process as quickly as possible and start for the work for our budget work session as well. Final thank you to the collaboration with my city partners, City Manager Palco and his staff as well, for working with us to continue to present a budget that meets the needs of our students in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. All right. So moving on to upcoming meetings. We have a regular school board meeting and the public hearing for the fiscal year 2025 superintendent proposed budget and capital improvement plan on Monday, February 26th at 6:59 in board chambers. And we have a work session on Monday, March 11th, 6:59 on the third floor upstairs in the school board conference room. Any board member comments?
I'd like to take a second and congratulate all the students who participated in district orchestra and district band. They did a wonderful job. Hearing from some of my students personally, they were talking and I believe their words were, "This is the hardest music we have ever played," and that says a lot because we have some very talented musicians here in our city. So I want to say congratulations to those students.
Okay. First off, I'd like to shout out the winter season athletes. The basketball team, our cheerleaders, cross country, and our indoor track team. Indoor track actually had a regional meet tonight, so best of luck to them. It's probably already over, but best of luck to them.
And the swim team,
And the swim team. Yes, I was
who had 3 reps go to states. Just letting you know, in case you didn't know.
Okay, go me for not remembering. But also, yes, shout out to our swim team. And last but not least, actually 2 more. The cast list came out for the high school spring musical today. You guys are not going to want to miss it. It's The Little Mermaid. I believe that is the first week of May, so just a heads up. And
Right now.
and I would also like to shout out all of our district choir reps. Some of us will be auditioning for All-State Chorus on Thursday evening, and then on Friday and Saturday we will be having a concert and rehearsal at Gainesville High School. I believe the SSAA concert begins at 2 p.m. and then the SATB concert begins at 2:30, and then the middle schoolers will perform at 3:15. So if you guys have nothing to do on Saturday afternoon, we would love to have you guys out there. We have 27 students that made all district choir this year. That is the largest number under Miss Shank, and we couldn't have done it without her. And we also have 3 middle schoolers. So shout out to them, and I'm super excited. Skipping school to sing for a whole day is one of my favorite things to do. So with that being said, just please make sure you check on your students. It is now the 2nd semester. It's getting a little rough because it's the 3rd week. So please make sure you check on your students. Make sure you check on your teachers that you know, because this can be an overwhelming time. So that's all I have to say.
Anyone else? All right. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess and shift upstairs for a closed meeting on personnel. Thank you all for coming.